What's going on YouTube? Josh here checking in. And if you've seen any of my recent videos, you probably figured out that I was at the Raw Unity meet this past weekend. If you don't know what that is, it's basically the largest powerlifting meet in all of North America, and it only happens once a year. So on the second day of lifting, I had the idea of taking some video from the side of some of the lifters doing their deadlifts. Now just to preface this, if you're not familiar with the meet, in order to compete in this competition, you need to have an elite powerlifting total, which is a pretty substantial accomplishment. So all of the people lifting are experienced lifters who know what they're doing. So I took some clips of this from the side of some of the middleweight men's division on the second day, and I selected 3 clips to analyze for you guys today. So I hope you enjoy it, and let's go right to the clips.
So this is Brendan Smitley. He's a 132 competitor. This was his second pull of the day. This is 501 pounds, and basically I just wanted to play it in full speed, and then I will back off. It was a good lift, and go through some of the salient points. So first, what I want to point out is at the top of the lift, his style, he likes to take a huge breath right into his lower abdomen at the top of the lift. You'll see some competitors like to do it at the bottom, some like to do it at the top. It's a matter of personal preference. As long as you get the air, and it doesn't really matter. So then he'll go ahead, grip the bar, and now he's basically ready to start pulling. So you'll notice that he's a shorter guy, so his hip position is not going to be necessarily all that high. But what I want you to pay attention to is the fact that he basically keeps his hips back for quite a while. So if that line roughly represents his hip starting position as far as how far back or forward relative to the bar, as I play it in slow motion, you'll see that his hips stay back. It's now at this point the bar is basically passing his knees, and now he's bringing his hips in. Okay, so a big mistake that I think a lot of people make when deadlifting is essentially what happens is they'll end up bringing their hips in too early. So say by here, at this point, they would already start bringing their hips in, and then what ends up happening is it's much harder to engage the glutes to finish the lockout. So you'll notice that he's got a pretty strong lockout. He's able to pull those hips through, no issues. All right. You will notice that there is a bit of back rounding. There is definitely some thoracic and also some lumbar back rounding. Thoracic rounding, remember, is not an issue. Lumbar is not the safest thing, but when you're a 132-pound guy deadlifting 501 pounds, a little bit of low back rounding I think is perfectly acceptable. So that's a lift. So this is video of Jason Schultz at RUM. This is his second attempt, and he is a 75-kilo competitor, so 165-pound class. And like the previous video, I'm going to play it in full speed, and then I'm going to slow it down. So that was the lift. It was a good lift. So we'll start from the top. You'll notice that unlike Brandon, what he does is he likes to make sure his hands are nice and set up, and he'll end up taking the breath at the bottom. So see that he just took his breath right there before he ends up sitting back. Right about here, he'll take a breath, he sits back, and then he gets ready to pull. So this is basically his starting position before he starts to pull. And what I want you to notice is you can almost imagine that there's a string coming from this part of his neck, from his sort of upper back area, pulling in that direction. And that's really basically allows him to pull the bar in a straight line. So you'll notice he basically goes like that. Pretty good. And let's see if there's some points that we want to look at. So one thing that he does that a lot of people would probably say is not the best is looking towards the ceiling. Most people would say for conventional lifting you want to kind of be looking that way. Obviously it doesn't matter for him because he manages to get the lift no problem. His hips are moderately high. They are definitely not anywhere. It's not like he's squatting the weight up, but again, he's not a really tall guy, so his hips are going to be lower than the taller guys. You'll see he pulls. He does have a little bit of back rounding, definitely right there. But you know that's going to happen sometimes. It's not perfect form per se, but he's got a strong lockout and he gets the lift. So this is George Grieve. He's a 181 lifter. This was a 601 pull as his second attempt. And overall, it was a pretty solid sumo pull. You'll notice at the bottom, he gets his air. His starting position, he starts with a pretty straight torso. I mean, he's not going to be right on top of the bar. He doesn't, most people are not right on top of the bar. But you'll notice that his hips are not really, he's not super low. That's a mistake a lot of people make, I think, when sumo pulling. You'll notice that it's probably ish around there. Maybe it would be a little bit more like that angle is probably more representative of what his start angle is, which I would say is pretty good for most people. Most people can't really go around 90 degrees and manage to break the floor with their legs. It's just a bit too high. So he breaks the floor with his legs, great job. And then right about here, it looks like his legs are not completely locked out. So he ends up doing like a little bit pop with the glutes, which isn't really an issue. It's a little bit different style than, say, what Dan Green does, which is basically lock the legs out and then finish the lift with your back. But it seemed to not really cause an issue, and it was a pretty solid lift for this for George. So that's it.